So the millennials, I've said the least represented group. They're a huge group, but they're not really well represented yet in our institutions. They're the least represented in our workforce. We have a high rate of unemployment. I think the last thing I saw was 20%. A lot of us don't have jobs, and some of us have a bajillion jobs like me. I have 3. And that's the only way I could get health care, which is interesting, I think, for my group. And in fact, in researching this, I was reading news articles that have to do with Occupy Wall Street, and someone said, you know, I don't know what's wrong with this generation. Every job I ever applied to had benefits. And I was like, what country is this person living in? Every job that I've applied to has never had benefits, and even church jobs. So most of the time, we don't have benefits. I really do want to say, it says the adult population of millennials makes up 11% of the UMC churches. Unlike Gen X, though, we're not really coming back to church when we hit those adult markers, like marriage, kids, home ownership. We aren't really sure we've ever found our place in the church, and we're hitting those markers later and later, and I think most millennials would even contest that idea of, have we become adults yet? Because we haven't hit those markers. A lot of us we want kids, but first we have, you know, $50,000 in debt to pay back. So they're being pretty adult, but they may not hit those markers. So here's just who I am, speaking as a millennial. I'm 31, which means I'm in that cusp of, am I Gen X? Am I Gen Y? Am I postmodern? Am I millennial? And then someone in my group, I was researching this, said, well, we're Generation Catalano. We're the 31-year-olds are the people that grew up with My So-Called Life, and Jordan Catalano is who we represent, you know, who we identify with the most. So the whole idea of defining generations, I think, can be pretty frustrating to millennials. I don't know that we want to be defined like Gen X got defined, and I don't know that we even see those same sorts of markers sometimes. It can feel more fluid for us, depending on who we're relating to and what they know about the things that we relate to. So here's what I want you to know about me as a 31-year-old millennial. I'm just putting this up here as note because I find it very interesting. But in my lifetime, I was born in 1980, we have never had a White House without a Bush or a Clinton somewhere in the White House. And currently, you know, we do have a Clinton as Secretary of State. And I don't know what I think about this, but in all of my life, in all of my 30 years, for me, the political landscape has just looked the same, right? Nothing's really happened. It doesn't look that different from my point of view. Technology. So some millennials remember rotary phones. I do. I remember when I first heard about email, and now the younger millennials don't even use email. I don't have a landline or a local phone number. My phone number is the first cell phone number I ever had from 1996, and that's a San Antonio number. I use the internet more than television, and I often watch TV on the web. I've used a computer in my home since I was 5 years old. Technology has always been something necessary to my everyday living, but it doesn't mean that I know everything about technology, right? That's sort of annoying to me when people are like, well, you know how to use this. No, I don't. But I will take the time to figure it out. Work life. I talked a little bit about this. I don't really care about upward mobility, and it's a good thing because it's not likely right now until some boomers retire. So I don't really care about that. I wish that I had health insurance, and I wish my friends had health insurance, and I usually work really hard to try to make that possible. And someone older was telling me just recently that, well, you can get health insurance individually pretty cheap. Well, 10 years ago, you could get a little cheaper because that's when I was buying it for myself, but it's gotten really hard to do that. Unlike friends my age, I do have benefits right now, but I cobbled together 3 jobs to get that. Time off is really, 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 really important to me, not because I want to go out drinking with my friends. I want to go visit my dad. I want to visit my friend from Philadelphia, who I went to college with. So a lot of times, even when I'm going away, it's not to party or because I'm flaky, which a lot of church people will say, oh, young adults aren't at church because they're really flaky. No, they're visiting parents usually. So remember that. I owe $50,000 in student loans, and that was with a full ride and half tuition. So I wasn't stupid when I went to college, and I still own $50K. Violence. I was a freshman in college when I watched Columbine happen on my little TV in my dorm room. And I was a senior in college when I watched 9/11 happen on my little TV in my dorm room. And I put Peter Jennings up there because, oddly enough, all of my friends, we rallied around Peter Jennings. Like, he was who got us through that year. I don't even know why, but we all have a lot of nostalgic feelings for Peter Jennings and his voice coming over the television. Because we didn't have parents, but we had Peter. War. I can't say this enough. It's something I try to let people know every time I'm talking about my generation. My entire adult life has been a war. I've never known an adult life or an economy without the ongoing conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Those people in high school, a lot of them were born into it. So for us, that's a pretty big marker of what's going on in our lives. We just don't know another reality. We really don't. I don't know really what that says about me. I don't know how that's going to affect us later. I can't give you an answer to that. But I can say that, again, when we get called flaky or idealistic, yeah, my generation is very hopeful. We do have a lot of idealism, but it's in this context, which I think is notable. So how do we relate to the postmoderns? 30-year-olds like me, I often have more in common with people that are 15 or 85, right? It's a lot harder for me to relate to my boomer parent generation, and it's often really hard to relate to Gen X because we don't have some shared memories, and we have some really different ways that we view the world. 9/11 had a profound impact on us, and we're more patriotic than Gen X, which can be weird, I think. For a group that really defined itself as against institution, we tend to be team-oriented and want to sort of recreate the institution, renewal, teamwork. These are things that we really focus on. We're skeptical. I think it's a different kind of patriotism, but it's still there. We still have that. We're idealistic. We crave attention. And that doesn't mean we want to be like, me, pay attention to me. It means that we need a lot of feedback, and we want mentorship, which is different from Gen X. A lot of us seek mentors, and we feel like our bosses, unless they give us feedback, we feel like we're not doing a good job.
You're doing a great job, Abby.
Thanks, Bob. That's my boss. We trust our elders, and we want their help. That's another interesting thing I think about millennials. So a lot of times when churches say, oh, young people don't want an old person coming to talk to them, that's not true. They actually do. And they value teamwork because we were forced again and again and again to do group projects growing up all the time. Things that we have in common with Gen X, and I think it's important to put those out there too. We really value work-family balance. Instead of upward mobility, we're going to look for the job that gives us paid time off. We want to spend time with our families. We don't really want to work and work and work and not see the point of that. That's There is a difference in that, though, in that we will take work home if we're really passionate about it and it becomes part of our lives. And I think Gen X is that way, too. We value diversity and the global community. We have realistic expectations, both groups of us do. We've seen pretty bad things happen. We're not idealistic to the point of stupidity. And I think that's one good thing that Gen X and Millennials do well together is Millennials can be very idealistic and Gen X can be pragmatic, which is important. We're both highly educated and technologically savvy, and we like to have a lot of fun. Generational differences can be overemphasized. Millennials especially, but I think Gen X too, it depends on how savvy you are when it comes to technology, how willing you are to enter into conversation with us. It doesn't really matter to us what age you are, just like a lot of times diversity is not, we want a diverse place. We don't really want to focus on what our differences are. So who cares about what age? And I say, granted, that's a very millennial thing to say, that we don't care. But there's this interesting website called How Millennial Are You? You can look it up and take the quiz. If you have a phone right now, you could do it. But it has these certain markers, some of the things that I've talked about, to see. So how does the church fit in for both of us? Well, Gen Xers and Millennials want diverse congregations. They just do. That's the type of congregation we want, and that's the type of congregation that we want to work for. So if our congregation isn't really willing to move that way, we're probably not going to be very happy there. We value authenticity. So when your website has a diverse congregation on it, and we walk in, and it's not, that's a problem. Just be who you are, right? Mission versus meetings. We don't want our time wasted. Our time is valuable. Even if we're just young, our time is valuable. I oftentimes don't want to be in a meeting and will leave meetings, even though I convened them. So please, if we're going to meet, let it be over mission. Paper is annoying, but too much technology can be showy. So don't just try to be who you really are if you want to reach us. It's okay not to have all the biggest and the best. Small is not bad. We don't always want a huge congregation. We don't always want to hide. A lot of us spend a lot of time in a shallow world, and we want depth. And we want to leave a legacy, which I think a lot of our older folks do. That's a really good point of meeting, I think.